as the cola.
All right. Perfect timing. We are live with D. He's going to be known as Citizen D when his book comes out. It Can't Be People. Voices from Inside the Circle. Our second faker maker in 10 and a half years on the show. Uh, Welcome, D. Yeah, you mentioned Matthew Williams. We had him on in 2014, man. I guess I can't believe you listened to that, but I was going to ask you if you knew him. I figured you must. So
Yeah,
welcome.
he's a good
That's
friend.
who it was. Now I
He's one of the
remember.
good ones.
Was he one of the good ones?
I think so.
Well, I mean, I do.
I take people as I find them. We've yet
Yeah,
to have an
good.
argument.
Yeah, good. I mean, I do remember, and I looked at the show notes. I didn't listen to the thing, but I do remember like he was also saying that depending on which way you look at the phenomena, like there is a there is a phenomena there still of high
Yeah.
strangeness because I was a bit skeptical of the faker makers. I was like, why are you guys out there faking them or making them or and it helped to have him on to talk about it. So it's good to talk about the subject again.
Good. That's
Yeah.
good. That's it. Yeah. 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 Fine. Fire away, guys. I'm yours.
Okay, well, let's just start from like let's get really like just dive right into the deep end and just from a real high level too. Like, so what you're saying that humans make a lot of these, but not all of them. Is that what you think?
Yeah, I believe that the original crop circles from like the late 70s. I mean, you've got to go back to the original phenomenon, which was the Australian tully nests from the 1970s that were done in grass that looked like birthed flying saucers. And when they started to appear, when similar images started to appear in our crop, because it wasn't grass, it was crop. It was much more pronounced because it was a couple of feet high. Those original single circles do have a very mysterious element to them, in that I've been in a couple. They tend not to be reported because they're not pretty for calendars, you know. But I've been in those sorts of circles, and the crop seems to be like bent like 6 inches up, and it looks as if God's come and drilled down and just gone up again. It's just really strange. But when the pictograms started with like the Led Zeppelin cover, etc., you know, and the stuff that you know today and the bling we've got now, that's when I think that the phenomena altered. And I actually think that the latter day sort of post 90 crop circles are actually a different phenomenon to the original ones that we saw when they actually started.
But are they still? That doesn't mean that those were all the massive pictogram ones were all human made, though. Is that what you think?
I'd have to contend that I've been researching this for 10, 20 years, okay, and I went in as a complete believer. My background is ufology. I'm a sort of, my gods are Jacques Vallée and John Keel and Jenny Randalls.
Yeah, yeah,
But I when I first started to research it, I thought it was impossible for these things to be done by anything other than an NHI or Gaia or Mother Earth or
yeah,
nature
yeah,
spirits.
yeah.
But the thing is, mate, I'm prepared at any time to have my mind changed again, because when I did find out that it was, you know, manifestly people doing these things, I was really peed off, because I'd been studying them for 10 years and I thought it was trickery and hoaxery. I thought that they were just trying to pull the wool over our eyes, etc. And I was really angry. But when I started to hear the accounts from the human circle makers of the things that were happening during, before and after creation, I then started to think, well, if there is a human component to this is actually far more exciting than birthed UFOs or messages from intergalactic space brothers. I think that once you put humans into the equation as like, I hate to say pawns or vessels, but as soon as you put humans in as a component of the phenomenon, I think the thing becomes very interesting. And all the things that your listeners love, you know, they're all still there when humans are inserted into the equation.
Yeah, that's
I think
fair.
that describes where Graham was at. He was angry about the crop circle faking back in the
Yeah,
time.
I was when I found out. I mean, to give you a bit of background, I spent 10 years just driving around Wiltshire, looking at crop circles based on where the reports were from the Crop Circle Connector website. And if there were 10 crop circles, and you found out two were man-made, you just wouldn't bother to go and see them. Okay. So yeah, I totally see where you are with it, and that's where I was, and I can totally see where your listeners would be. It's my definition of a hoax crop circle is a crop circle that's done either like for art, which is cool, that's fine, nothing wrong with that, or one that's done for ego or to like laugh at tourists. Or one that's done for like a commission for a commercial or advertising campaign. Because what you've got to look at is because the crop circles are made in these really ancient Neolithic sites, there seems to be some correlation with the sites and the images that we're placing into these sites, which kind of like interacts with something that our forebears were doing thousands of years ago when they built the stone circles and they built the tumuli and they built Avebury and Stonehenge. There seems to be, when I get reports from crop circle makers, when I look for high strangeness, the reports that I get tend to dissipate as we go away from Wiltshire and as we go away from these key sites. But you've got to remember that people have been seeing weird shit in this area for hundreds and hundreds of years, but whereas now we call them UAPs, they called it, nature spirits or will-o'-the-wisps or, away with the fairies. It's always existed here, but it just seems to be that the stone circles and what we've inherited from our forebears in doing the crop circles just seems to exacerbate and sort of, they're like jump leads for the energy that's already here.
Well, what's the intention of the non-hoaxers then? Like, if you think that art and the ego is the the definition of a hoaxer, then what's a legitimate reason to fake a circle then, or to make a circle that people are going to think wasn't made by humans? Like it could all be seen like as deception in some ways.
No, there's a dictonomy to this, and that is that we have to make, or when I was doing it, we had to make the circles look as if they weren't man-made for the magic to be instilled into them. Okay? Our definition is that what you've got to remember is that this is a bit like Close Encounters. A lot of us are compelled to make these things, or we're impelled to make them, and we don't necessarily know why. And what we find is that sometimes you get a lot of missteps and mistakes are made. There seems to be some sort of engineering involved where you go to put a circle in a field, you've had to pick a different field because the first one's got a roadblock or something, and then you find out that particular circle had to go in that particular field. But what I consider to be a genuine formation is one that's done with respect to the land in which it's placed. And it's done not with a view to putting the wool over people's eyes. It's done because we just feel compelled to do it. And a lot of people that do make crop circles do have a deep-seated fascination with, spirituality and ufology and the paranormal. And it just seems to be that if we show interest in it, the phenomenon kind of aligns with us. Do you see what I mean? I'm not saying we're channeled, we're not special, we're not anointed, but it just seems to be that if you just show a respect to what you're doing, okay, and you let yourself align to the phenomena, that's what I consider to be a true human crop circle, one that's done with the right spiritual intent.
All right, that makes sense. Yeah.
So is it like a ritual then, or can people look at this as more like going out and making the circle as like a ritual that you don't really want to share with the public, and it's being misinterpreted as UFOs, or how do you?
Well, there's three things I'd say to that. The first thing is that when I first went out, with a team that had been doing them for years and years, they did this little sort of incantation before they started, and it basically said, I'm paraphrasing and it's not scripted, but the team leader said something along the lines of, please protect us in our endeavours, can you please make sure that this crop circle brings joy to those that visit it, and The second that we leave the crop circle, it doesn't belong to us anymore. So for the time that you're making it, it's yours. But the second that you leave that field, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to the world.
And these implications or these incantations would make a difference, you think?
Well, we tend to ask not to be caught, and we ask for protection. But
Thus your anonymous nature right now.
yeah, I mean the reason there's three reasons why I'm anonymous. The first one is that it's illegal to make crop circles in this country, and there's no statute of limitations. And if I get tied to a crop circle now, it's not a criminal offence, but it's actually a civil offence if the farmer wants to pursue it even now. The second thing is that this is a very contentious subject, and I'm presenting a narrative that a lot of people aren't going to like, but we're just saying that with us in the equation, it's still mysterious and it's still a joyous thing. But the third thing is that we want the art to speak rather than the artist. It's not really about us as personalities. My job today is to try and relate some of the strangeness that goes on, where we think there's some sort of interconnection with something else. There's very strange things that go on before and after the creation, but we don't know if there's some sort of telepathy between the crop circle makers themselves, through the sheldrake species field or the collective unconsciousness, or if we're actually interacting with something else higher.
Yeah. What about some of the science that was done in
what would they say, like they did bust you for a crop circle, like how much, what is that financial sort of fallout of something like? Because I mean, I will say there is a certain level of I don't know what the word is, but it's like there's a nobleness to creating art and not putting your name on it in an era when everyone wants to put their name all over everything. Because the one thing that I'll say is even if all the crop circles are fake, nobody's getting any notoriety for it.
Yeah. Well, the answer is what the farmers get annoyed with more than anything else, and what we've already seen this season already, was a crop circle went down in Avebury 2 nights ago, and the farmer defaced it the next day. Because it's not so much the act of the crop circle which does the damage, it's all the people that come in afterwards and just trash his land. They don't use the tram lines, they trample all over the things. And in terms of financial terms, depending on how much crop we sort of crush, it's if you look at the agricultural websites and you find out what the cost of crop is, okay, generally it's about sort of 400 quid. Okay, yeah, that's the one I'm looking at there. This
is the one, eh?
Yeah, but it's gone.
Avebury's Sacred Edge, a place of ancient magic, 12-fold geometry and wheat beneath the sun. No footsteps, no machines, no claims. Just one question: is this geometry or guidance?
But that's kind of where we are, isn't it, with this conversation? Because we think there's something else at play. And if I can give you just an example as to why we think that's happening. The first crop circle that I ever made with my own team, I kept on having this recurring dream where I had this like out-of-body experience. I was flying over these 2 fields that I didn't recognise, and there was different crop circles in each field, completely different patterns, and I kept on having this recurring dream. And in this dream was a school friend that I knew that I hadn't thought of for 40 years. I had no reason to think of him, and every time I woke up I thought, God, it's those fields again, it's that dream again, it's those circles again, and it's that guy again. Why am I thinking of that guy? And then one day I took a wrong turn and I found myself in the landscape, these 2 actual fields. It was exactly what I'd seen in my dream. And I looked to my left and I saw that the name of the road that I'd taken a wrong turn, inverted commas, down to was the same name of the road that this guy used to live in when I used to go around his house like 40 years before. And I thought, well, that's odd. So I had a team of 4, and I was determined that I had to get one of these crop circles down in one of those fields. But I didn't have time to do both. It was a small team. And anyway, long story short, we got a circle down. The next day, my partner phoned me and she said, "Well, you were busy last night." I said, "Yeah, we got a circle down." She goes, "No, you didn't. You got both of them down." I said, "No, we didn't." I said, "We just did the one." And apparently, if you looked on the aerial shot on Google Earth, my crop circle was in one field, and then the other crop circle from my dream was in the other field. But aerially, there was a big hill which separated us, so we couldn't see that team working, and they couldn't see us working. And that's the first instance where I thought, is there something else going on here where we're kind of being played, or whether we're aligning to something. But when I interview crop circle makers for this upcoming book, it will take as long as it takes. We're all telling the same stories. We're all getting the same things, and we're all reporting the same dream-driven events. We're getting synchronicities. We're getting, as I said, wrong turns, and what you think is a mistake isn't a mistake. You go into a field to make a circle, another team's already done it the previous night or a couple of hours before, and that's when we start to think, is there something going on? And you have to remember, the further I get from Wiltshire, these reports dissipate. I don't get much when I start to talk to people who didn't make within the Neolithic sites. We think there's something spiritual at play, which goes back thousands of years. To, as I said, when our forebears were making the stone circles.
Could it be a more modern deep state type thing, like Black Project experimentation or something like that?
No, I mean, we do see military over the crop circles, but the only conspiracy sort of head I've got for that is that it just seems to be strange that whenever you see Neolithic ancient sites, there always seems to be a fucking great military base, nearby. It's almost as if, the sites were there first
for a reason. Yeah, the base.
Yeah. And we do see a lot of military stuff, and you do wonder. But I do know that a lot of these things are used for exercises. So flying around Wiltshire is pretty boring because all the fields look the same. So, if on an exercise, they might be told to go to a certain set of coordinates, come back with what you report, and there's a crop circle there because it's part of the exercise. But I don't think there's any black projects involved here, guys. I'm more going down the avenue of the fact that these lights have been seen for generations and generations, called different things, like what you used to call what you used to call away with the fairies is now abduction by greys. It just seems to be. I think personally, having studied ufology for a long, long time, I went away from the ETH many years ago, and I actually believe now that this is actually an interdimensional phenomenon which is actually working with us on a different wavelength that we can't see. And I think it masquerades itself as ET. And I think it's that we're tapping into. It masquerades itself like this. That's my opinion.
I meant more about the black projects being consciousness related. So not physically like doing the work or anything like that, but they've done a lot of, MK Ultra stuff, consciousness experiments, and going back like almost 100 years now. So that's kind of what I was thinking of. Are they tapping into are they creating some of this, these synchronicities, this mysterious stuff? Like that's
wow. I've never thought of that. But where would that start? Because the crop circle season is between May and September. We've got the rest of the year to craft what we're going to do. So are you saying that those experiences would actually be occurring when I'm at home 100 miles away?
I don't know. Because I've done some CE5 stuff, and we see phenomena happen. We see lights flying around. It's not just stars and stuff like that. And I often wonder if they're tapping into our consciousness, and it's not an ET thing. It's a deep state thing. Somebody's out there playing around with groups of us that are looking for UFOs. And then I've heard a whole bunch of skeptical people say the same thing. They'd rather, it almost seems harder to believe, but they would blame the deep state over ETs for showing us to them, for showing themselves to us. You know what I mean? So it just made me think of the same kind of thing. Like if they can tap into our consciousness or.
Well, yeah. What I'd say is interesting about that is that it's a Roy Neary thing. Some of us, we feel compelled, to do it. And I've got a friend who was he wasn't a police officer, but he wasn't far off. And we used to rib him and say, you know, if your bosses knew what you were doing, you know, you'd be in serious trouble. And he used to have a joke to say, look, if the lot upstairs decide that this is what you're going to do downstairs, they don't really care what your job is. It's illegal on our plane, but it's not illegal on that plane. So I'd never actually thought of that before, but I'd like to think it wasn't the case, because
you could think it's more of an ancient sort of power or magic.
That is where I am with it, honestly. And as I said, I was really angry when I found out that these things, you know, predominantly were made by people. But when I spoke to the crop circle makers that had good spiritual intent, I know of a few that were doing it because they'd had missing time as children and they were trying to reconnect with whatever this was. And they all started from the ET house, okay? And they all, because the first time I went to Wiltshire, irrespective of crop circles, there's a real vibe there, guys. It's really... You go there and suddenly you have this vibe of, well, I'm remembering something through the collective consciousness that our forebears knew that's now been kicked out of us in this technocratic age. It's the purity to the land there, where you do feel as if it's quite sacred, you know, irrespective of what your religious beliefs are. There is something sacred and sort of something deferential and reverential within that land.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I want to ask you about some of the synchronicities, because there's a couple examples like the 6 people team and the Wicca example. But I also want to ask you about the science, some of the science that was done in the 90s. I mean, this was like really popular in the 90s and the knots, and the BLT research had a lot of stuff going on. Linda Moulton Howe wrote a bunch of books on it in the 90s, or at least the glimpses of other realities. And it seemed to be like they could tell the difference between man-made and not man-made. Like, from what I remember, because I haven't really looked at it for years either, but from what I remember, they could tell the difference, right? Whether it was energy or whether it was the way the crops were bent and overlapped, like you said, or the changes in the genetic structure of them, the way they would get planted in some other field. They would do sample examples and, you know, they would grow better. So what about all that science that was done? Was that all just not really up to snuff, or was there a way where they could tell the difference between man-made and not man-made?
Look up the work of Stuart Anthony. He's a crop scientist, and he was actually called in to consult on these papers, okay? Yes, they were peer reviewed. That doesn't mean to say that they were peer accepted. Okay, now Stuart has got every argument that I have, because I play devil's advocate all the time and say, Stuart, I'll be asked these questions. Okay, so firstly, as regards bent not broken, that's a really big one. Okay, now the first thing you've got to remember with bent not broken is that when the crop circles are being made at night, there's a lot of moisture within the crop that isn't there in the day, because in the day it's being baked by the sun. Okay, if you were to try to and people say also, oh, the boards are strapped to your feet. It's just all language which is designed to, like, you know, really sort of debunk, you know, the human element. We use boards. They're at arm length. We've got full control of them. We use meter boards, half meter boards, square boards. And I defy you to go into a circle and do a single stop mark in a field, with the farmer's permission, of course, and break every single, you know, stalk there. When you go in, a crop circle is like a crime scene in 2 respects. Firstly, it's a crime scene because we've committed criminal damage. Secondly, if you don't get to that crop circle, like within hours of it being made, the damage you're seeing is the damage from the 100 or 200 people that have gone in and trampled over it before you've got there. Okay, people do not consider that. And the last thing I'd say is that there was a crop circle made in 2012 in Yatesbury, which was done as part of a school project, and that was overseen by one of the seminal 90s crop circle artists. They were finding bent stalks all over this thing. And the people that you're talking about were reporting, oh, look at this, we've got bent stalks all over it. As soon as it was actually said categorically that this was a school project, they all finished. You know, it just seems to be, if you want to find it, you're going to find it. But the papers have been peer reviewed. They haven't been peer accepted. I know every example you're going to chuck at me. Okay, bent not broken, the weaving, the nests.
The
People
blown
seem,
nodes, like somebody said in the chat, they're the
yeah, but
blown
that,
nodes.
but the blown nodes is phototropism. Okay, now what that means is when a stalk is bent but doesn't die. Okay, its natural inclination is to try and move up towards the sun again. Okay, and that is where the oxen is released from the knuckle that looks to you like a burn. Okay, if you speak to any farmer or any crop scientist, they will actually just take you down and debunk these arguments one by one by one. And unfortunately, you see, you were asking these questions of Matt 10 years ago. We're still being asked the same questions.
Right. Yeah, well, because to me it wasn't really, it was, to me it seemed like they were admitting, okay, these are human made, these aren't human made. Like there seemed to be a difference there, like whether it was from energy inside it or whatever. So this one that happened in Wiltshire like 3 days ago, is that, do you know who made that one?
Yeah.
You do? I'm just going to show another video. I'm just going to show another picture of it too.
Are the Avery Stones in that same county as Stonehenge?
Yeah, that is just over the road from Amesbury Stone Circle. That is like a prime Neolithic site. But it's the farmer's defaced it now. He's gone. He hasn't actually cut the whole thing, because obviously he wants the rest of the crop to grow. But he's gone on the inside of it now to make it look. It's not worth your while going there.
Oh, it looks 3D. It looks 3D. The
crop. He just doesn't want people going out there.
What the farmer doesn't want the people now to go in and wreck his crop. As I said, what you're seeing there's very little damage, okay? But I guarantee you, if he allowed that crop circle to stay there, and you took that same little image there from 2 weeks from now, it'll be trashed.
So how did you guys get in there without wrecking the place? Just following those tram lines?
Exactly. You follow the tram lines. Yeah. And people say also, God, you need flashlights. You don't need flashlights. Your eyes become accustomed to the dark very, very quickly. And
is moonlight a key thing during a full moon or anything?
You can do it without it, because what you've got to remember is once that stomp mark is down, that part of the crop looks darker than the rest.
Yeah, okay, because up duck blinds in the dark. I mean, you're walking down the tram lines, the same thing. You don't want to make any footprints in the crop, and you can see more than you think once you get out there.
Listen, what you got to realize, guys, that I was a believer for like decades, okay, and then what happened to me was that I started to hear these second-hand reports from crop circle makers reporting these synchronicities, these time distortions, the really weird stuff, the dream-driven events. And what happened was I was overheard by a crop circle team, and I said, I don't care how they got there. I'm concerned with what they do when they're there. And I was invited out that night. And once you go out, and it's a mythology, because you've had this mythology of 10 years thinking, how was it done? And then you go in and you see how it's done. And the scales do fall from your eyes. And let's
get into some of those examples. But I want to ask you one more question before we move on from the old myths and stuff. Same guy in the chats here, Jimbo Hap. What about the Patty Greer video of balls of light creating 1 in seconds? You know that famous video.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
says nobody's ever debunked it, right?
They have. Yes, they have. They have. That was the Oliver's Castle. That was the Oliver's Castle video. The crop circle was already there. There's no doubt about that at all. Okay, but there's so much I can say about it. But the key thing is that was made by somebody that was working in a CGI studio in Bristol at the time. Now, a friend of mine was asked to be in on that, okay? And he said to the person concerned, is this going to be like a demonstration? And he went, no, I'm going to wind people up. And my friend said, I'm not interested. But if you look, just look at the Skeptical Inquiry. If you look at Oliver's Castle debunked, you're going to find all the answers there. Okay?
Yeah,
and he has come out and said it afterwards. The problem with
those answers is the skeptics were ridiculously dogmatic and over skeptical, so they kind of ruined it as well. I mean, it's I sort of believe you guys more than like the battle over the new atheists and the skeptical movement in the 90s and the 2000s too. I mean, that was ridiculous, right?
Yeah. Well, I look at that and it sort of makes my blood boil every time I see it, because if you look at it, it's obviously been placed on there afterwards. And what annoys me is that the stuff I'm talking to you about today is where we really should be talking, and stuff like that video just drags us back 20, 30 years. You've got a lot of people say, I saw orbs form crop circles. I saw orbs and there was a crop circle. Now, I don't doubt that they saw those things, but they didn't see it forming the crop circle. The orbs become interested. I've actually made formations where you look over your shoulder at the end and you can see those things dancing about as if it's like a compliance test, as if they're auditing what you've done. Those things are there anyway. Yeah. And we think that we are actually, that the act of actually spiritually making that circle actually attracts this phenomena.
Is there a purpose for that?
This is like a high level hoax in this video where they've added some sort of filter to reveal the. I mean, I've never seen this before. It looks kind of fake just watching it.
No, but look at how this looks different. It doesn't look like it was. It looks like what do they call it? Bas relief. It looks like a bas relief. It comes up instead of down. But is that just how they look? Because it's
just how they look. It's just aesthetic. That's flattened crop. What you're seeing is the shadows there.
Yeah, it looks like it looks puffy and not like flattened. There, it looks flattened.
No, it's just the light on it. It's just the light on it.
Yeah.
There you go. You can see it now. It's just flattened crop.
Yeah.
Yeah, see the shadow there.
Well, are they? Do you think there's functionality to them? Like, is there a purpose? Are they designs? I mean, it really feels like they're sigils of some sort of. I mean, especially since there's this magical quality you're talking about.
I did a podcast with a pagan sort of
last week. It was good.
Yeah, he's great. He was great. Stygian was great. But yeah, I think it's fair to say that there's some sort of. See, sometimes we make an image, guys, and then we find out that sometimes you put a mistake in an image and you have to replicate that mistake, because the beauty is that only we know what it's supposed to be in the first place. So if we make a mistake and we have to replicate the mistake, you're none the wiser as to what it was supposed to be. And then we find out that it's that mistake which is the most important part of the circle, because it has relevance to the date, or it has relevance to the place that you place it in, or both. Or sometimes you get a crop circle that just resonates with one single person, you know? And you think, well, that didn't make much sense. And then in the grapevine, you find out months or years later, you know, that crop circle that you made, you know what that meant to that person. It was really special, you know?
Well, can you talk about that one example? I mean, the two that come to mind for me is the Wicca one and also the sixth, because you mentioned your dream one, which is the third one I wanted you to mention, but the one with the 6 people, the new team kind of thing.
Yeah, okay. What happened there was that people at any time, certainly when I was doing them 10 years ago, there was like 60 per season. It was rife. The ground was rife with them. Okay, and you do tend to know the other people that make the other ones. Sometimes you borrow a team member because they're like Banksy. They've got tags. They've got things they're good at doing. So we can say, could we borrow that guy because we want to put one of his features in, because we need that feature in the circle. So, that's quite common. So we had a situation where we had 6 people. We all knew each other. It was going to be a cakewalk. Okay. And we arranged to meet in the pub. I know we've got the trope of, it's just drunk people coming home from the pub. It's not. We're focused. We'll have half a pint, okay? And we know exactly what we're doing. So there were 6 of us. We were just about to start and just about to leave the pub for a 10 p.m. start, because we've got 5 hours between 10 and 3 a.m. Because people say, they're formed in seconds. They're not, okay? There's no evidence of that at all. You've got the Julius set example where apparently the Stonehenge one was made over 45 minutes, but it's been completely debunked. So we were 6 of us in the pub, all knew each other, just about to start, just about to leave the pub, and we got a one of the team members got a phone call. He's got called away. He's forgotten that he's actually on the team that night, and then his mate goes, "Oh shit, I'm on that team as well." So we were 2 down. So if you've got a 4-man team, it's like sport. You have to modify your game. Okay, so
Yeah, because
we
you have a
thought, well,
plan. You have to plan the whole thing.
yeah,
Right?
we thought, well, we either make it smaller, or well, we can't because we've lost that guy, and that's his tag we've lost there. So you either have to make it smaller or just do something completely different. We've all got folders. We've all got like B, we've all got Plan B designs. And then we were down another member because somebody was called away on a family matter. So then we're down to 3. And we were panicking, and then somebody said, well, hold on, I spoke to a tourist last week and he was intimating pretty clearly that he thinks we're circle makers. I think he's going to be aligned. Let's get him down. Oh, get his friend down. So 2 people. Then somebody else has to go. The team leader said, there's not enough experience here. I'm off. Just call the whole thing off. And then my friend gets a phone call from a person that lives in Birmingham. And he says, what you doing in Birmingham? He says, I'm down for the night. He says, get your ass down here. And it was just this chess game where and then a guy from Amsterdam turned up that we knew from 2 years before. And long story short, the 6 people that went out were completely different to the 6 people that were supposed to go out. And it is very uncomfortable because whereas before we all knew each other, in the UV to go to the make, we didn't all know each other. It was all really stilted. It was quite awkward. And then one of us passed a piece of gum round and said, well, if my mother knew what we're doing this evening, she'd be absolutely freaked out because she's a spiritualist, and she really identifies with like the Wiccan side of this, with what we're doing. And I said to him, well, you can bring her down next year. And he went, well, I can't because she passed away last year. And then like this charge went through the car. I still get it now. And then I said, well, I lost my mum last year. And then it all went like Spartacus. And like I lost my mum. And it was everyone in the team. And then we realised that the crop circle that we were going to make was actually a celebration of Mother Earth. And that freaked us out. And then when we made it, by all accounts, there was actually a team. There was a group of night watchers watching that particular area, and we didn't know they were there. And we made that circle under a full moon, and it was a really good circuit. It went without a hitch. And then the next day we were in the circle, and we saw when you go into the circle the next day, you have to like change your clothes, and you can't. Yeah, you have to go in like Kiss without the makeup. So. And we saw these people that had been watching, and they said we saw nothing. We didn't use torches or anything, but they would have probably heard the sound of the rust of the crop going up the slope. They said that we saw nothing. This has got to be man. This has got to be alien made.
Even under a full moon, you did it without them seeing it.
Yeah, you see, there's a story that Matt told me as well, where they were going to make a circle, and they saw some night watchers, and they said, well, we can't do it. They've got a telescope. They're definitely going to see us, even though the telescope is trained, to the Milky Way. They're definitely going to see us if they come down. And Matt just said, I've got a vibe we should do it anyway. I think it's going to be okay. And they made the crop circle, and nothing went wrong. They thought, how the hell did we get away with that? And then it was reported the next day that this fog bank, it's like a handkerchief shape, this fog bank just docked over the circle, as over that part of the field where they're making the circle, and the night watchers just tried to put their telescope through it, and it was like this condensed bank of fog, and apparently it dissipated when they left the field. So that's when you think there's some sort of protection there. And I hear lots of stories where people just don't see it when it's being done.
Yeah, some trickster element. Like they want people to think this is interdimensional NIH type stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's the bit I don't understand really, because
that just throws a whole other wrench in it.
Yeah, I know. That's the bit that interests me. I mean, I hate to be. I wasn't trying to be short with you before, but we're so sick of the bent not broken and stuff.
Oh yeah. No.
We really think that. I can't see your chat panel right now, thankfully. But once you insert humans in. What I'm saying is, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Even if you just concede that we do some of them, don't say, "Oh, it's man-made, it's a hoax." There's something else going on. Then that's what compelled me to keep doing it.
Yeah. Well, what's the Wicca example too?
Oh, that was crazy. And it's interesting. because I've been interviewing crop circle makers for like some years for this thing. All the stories tend to be the same. So I can't record a lot of them because they're too similar to something that we've got already. But the Wicca stories, I've had, since I recorded that, somebody else has come and said that something almost identical happened to me. And what happened was this circle maker was in bed, like I think he was staying with a friend, so it was a bit uncomfortable. So he was staying, I think he was staying with a friend. He said he woke up at midnight after one too many glasses of wine, and he just said he felt like shaken awake. He said there wasn't anything else in the room, but he said he felt like there was, the wakefulness was external, if you see what I mean. And it was midnight, and he thought he was compelled to go to this particular field and make this particular crop circle. And he was saying to himself, like, God, there's nowhere I'd less like to be at the moment than out in a field. You know, I'm snug. I'm semi-drunk. You know, leave it. But he said it wasn't like a joyous reaction to a calling. This thing just kept on at him. Just like when your cat scratches you for food, the only way you're going to stop it is to get up and see to it. He said, so it wasn't like this joyous, you know, event. He just, I've got to do it. So he actually got his kit out. He went to this particular. He got sick of walking, okay, and he went, and all the time that he was there, this imprint of this particular image was flashing in his mind. You've got to do this. You've got to do this. So he got sick of walking. He said, I'll just do it in this field instead. He walked into this wrong field, went to start to do the first stump mark, and then he just had this nauseous feeling he felt, and then this image like was pulsing in his head. He felt really uncomfortable, like nauseous, not physically sick, but really ill. And then as soon as he changed his course and then went back on course to the right field, it was all right. And he said when he went to the correct field to make the specific pattern, which was a little bit outside of his own capabilities by his own admission, he said the second that I actually put that first stump mark in the field, I had this rush of energy. It was like, he called it cosmic Red Bull. He said I was completely energized. I felt this joyous thing where I really should be here. This is exactly what you should be doing at this point. And he got this thing dusted off in a couple of hours. But because he was by himself, he had to use a tent peg to like where the other team member would be, and he had to use that and dig it into the soil and do his marking out that way. And then basically he just dropped asleep on the spot once he hid his kit, and he dropped asleep on the spot. Woke up the next morning, and there was this group of girls just freaking out in the pattern that he'd made. And he sort of pretended that he'd just got there and he was sleeping under a tree. He just got there. They didn't know he'd been there the previous night. And they were freaking out, and he was thinking to himself, well, it wasn't that good. You know, I did all right, but it's not brilliant. And this girl came out and she goes, turns out they were Wiccans. And this girl was, she was grappling for something around her neck. She goes, we did an invocation. We did an invocation, and Mother Nature answered us. And she got this thing out of it was like a talisman, this pendant. And she said, look. And it was it was the same, exactly the same pattern. And of course, with my friend, the penny dropped. And what was also interesting that I didn't put in the Substack was that he said that as he was working, he could hear chanting and music and celebration at the point where these girls were. So he thought, well, I'm going to be really quiet here. Where normally I might use a flashlight, I'm going to be really, really quiet. I'm going to do it all by, naked eye. And he said to the girls, well, when did you start doing this incantation? And they said, well, midnight, of course, when Wicca is at its most powerful. And of course, that's exactly the time when he was woken up. And he said to them, so were you making a noise then when you were doing your spells? And she goes, no, we do it inwardly. So first of all, you've got the event there of him being called out of bed to do that. And secondly, you've got this distortion where he heard like the vocal interpretation of what their inward spell would be, and it was like this like musical festival. And that's what, because he said if he'd have actually not heard that music, he'd have actually just been really careless and almost definitely got caught. But what I can't see is, I don't know whether we are again dealing with each other telepathically, or whether there is something else externalized which is making this thing happen.
Well, either way, it seems like that area of Wiltshire is enabling that connection or something.
I totally agree with you. And as I said to you, I speak to well-meaning circle makers. I speak to really good Italian makers and French crop circle makers, and I say, look, everything you tell me is confidential. I'm not going to mention your names. Can you please tell me the strange events you've had when you've made your crop circles? And they come back and they've got diddly squat, because they're making away from these like sort of hallowed areas.
Interesting.
You know?
Oh, okay.
And that's where I think, you know, I can't see your chat panel, but
no, it's okay. It's not. There's no lot of chat.
But it's just, what we're saying is, once you put the humans into this equation, guys, and you forget bent not broken, you forget all of the pseudoscience that we've been bogged down with for the past 20 years. If you're brave enough, as I was, to insert humans into the equation, this is a far deeper mystery than the one that you thought it was. It might not be the one that you necessarily want, but if you accept it, there's something definitely going on. And we're not channeled, we're not special. It just seems to be that the phenomenon needs us to do those tricky bits. You know, you got those first single circles from the 70s and 80s. As I said to you, I think that's a different phenomenon. And I think that is genuine, and I don't know how it was done. But
well, what about the whole Doug and Dave sort of hoax thing, and the way they showed? Because the guy in the chat is asking about Doug and Dave. He said, has he said how they make, like, how do you make them? It's not the Doug and Dave style, is it? And is your name D?
Yeah, I'm not connected to those guys at all.
No.
Okay.
But is it a nod to Doug and Dave, the D?
No, not at all. Okay. Not at all. See, Doug and Dave, they were like the godfathers. That, you know, they claimed to have done all these crop circles. I know they probably did do the basic ones, but they couldn't replicate the complicated ones. I've got mixed feelings about them. I mean, some people, and what you said before about the psyop, some people claim that they had to be wheeled out in order to debunk this, because interest was so, the royal family was interested in it, Prince Philip was interested in it. It was almost as if we had to wheel out Doug and Dave to actually put the kibosh on it before people got really, really interested. So I haven't got all the answers, mate, but yeah.
How do you do it with the boards? But it is like boards on your feet type thing? Like,
no, again, this is what I went through with Richard Sarrett, who I actually...
Oh, yeah.
Richard Sarrett, he started off with the same dialogue that you've got, and in the end we were mates, so we still talk. But I said to you, it's this language that's occurred. You said strap to your feet. We're not strapping anything to our feet. That implies that we are just walking around in clunky skis and we're just thrashing around. They're not. They're boards. They've got rope through holes bordered at each end, and they're very maneuverable. Okay. And we use meter boards, half meter boards, square boards. But when you get people say, well, you can't weave like that. You can. You just move. Once the outer line is done, you just move. You just board in with the inner lines. It doesn't matter if they're curved. You just make the board follow it. It's really. But I don't expect you to, unless you've been an expert by experience. All the things that I'm talking about, that the scales didn't fall from my eyes until I did it.
Simple, you know? In a way,
we should make one.
It's going to meet the geometry of the circle and the rectangle and the square, and it's the geometry that can hardly be figured out on paper, never mind about in a field. I mean, there's all those things.
Well, the first thing I thought was, how do they make a straight line? I just couldn't get my head around that. And then they showed me how it was done. But basically, all they did, some of the teams that I work with, they didn't use tape; they used mariner's rope because it's really strong. Okay, and I said, "But how do you do a straight line?" And they all they did was they measured out the line they wanted to do. So you had one guy, at one end, the other guy at the one end, at the other end, and the other guy just sidesteps along the rope.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then that looks rubbish. But once you've actually boarded that part of it, it's flush, you know. I mean, I can't do a lot of the crop circles that I've seen historically, but after I did that first one, there was another crop circle made the following morning, and I went into it and I thought, well, this is brilliant. I sure couldn't do it, but I could sure give you an idea as to how it was done because I was out last night for the first time. And when I did make my first one, I actually said to my partner, I'm only doing this to see if any of these apocryphal tales that I've heard are correct. If I don't experience anything supernatural, I'm never going to do this again. And we went out to this field. It was a 2-stage event. The crop circle had actually been started the night before, but it hadn't been finished because they run out of night time. So we had to go back. And this guy called me in. He said, we like what you say about, you being interested in what the effects of the crop circle are. We think that you are aligned. Would you like to come out? I said, God, yes. So we got the crop circle done, finished. Nothing happened. And I thought, you guys are just pulling the wool over. And I was back to this hatred mode. I've wasted my night here. Nothing's happened. God, you're just tricksters. You're just ego-driven people. You're tricking people. And then the second that we finished the circle, I saw this magnesium flash go off at the end, at the perimeter, right at the perimeter edge of the crop circle that we just made. And I said to T, I nearly said his name then. I said, look, we've been caught. That's people. They've been watching us. They're taking pictures. It's like those old Polaroid flash bulbs. And as I said that, this light proliferated. It became 3 lights, then 6 lights, then 12 lights, and then 30 lights. And I write it in my Substack as the biggest necklace in the world. And these lights just sprinkled around the perimeter of the circle that we just made. We were surrounded by them. And I said, what the hell is that? And T said, that's just them telling us that this is finished. It's a little round of applause. It's telling us not to do anything else with it in case we mess it up. And it's telling us just to go home and leave the circle to do its work. And he looked upwards and he said, okay, now we're going now. We've done our bit. Now you do your bit. And I said, T, who the hell are you talking to? And he went, that lot upstairs. And this is the guy that had missing time as a child. And then the second crop circle that I made, we went and then as soon as we started to make it, we saw this pink light just from nowhere. This pink light flashed in the sky above our heads, and it was there for the duration. And we thought it was a chopper because of the military thing. I thought, oh God, this is terrible. But that's a Chinook or something. But it wasn't. There was no rotor blades. There was no sound. It stayed stationary for 3 hours. And then the second we did that last stump mark, it was gone, blink, gone. It was like a babysitter or something. So strange things don't happen all the time, guys. I've got to be very clear about that. You'll always get something eventful or funny go during the make. Like once we were told to be like ninja, and he said nobody can see you when you're driving, and then this guy indicated his indicator light just like lit up the whole of Wiltshire. So we always get something eventful, but in terms of paranormal or supernatural, I would only say that happens 40 to 50% of the time. We don't get it all the time, but it's that stuff that compels you to keep doing it.
Yeah, those are crazy experiences. I mean, I agree with you. The mystery is deeper. If you accept this sort of way to look at it, it is a deeper mystery in a lot of ways. I mean, what is when T said like what? Let it do its thing. Like, what is its thing? Like, what is it there for? What is it doing? Is it?
Yeah, we don't know, guys. People say, "What's the messages?" I've done lots of these podcasts now. What's the message? We don't know, and sometimes we don't find out for months, maybe years later. And that we've made a mistake. We've taken a wrong turn, and we think, how much of that is engineered? Why were we in that field when we should have been in that field? And then you start to, and then the onion starts to unravel, and then you think, how much of this? It's like what you said before about the psyops. How much of this is actually us, and how much of this is actually being orchestrated from something else? And I hope it's positive, because I like to think that we're dealing with as long as we're being respectful of the energies and respectful of the lands. It's supposed to be. We're doing it with respect.
Well, it's
but
beautiful.
You do wonder.
I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, how it's hard for it to. It would be hard to believe it would be negative with the sheer beauty and these designs have an effect on people. They have effects when they go into the circles still, like regardless of right. I mean, even do people feel supernatural effects, like not the makers themselves, but visitors, even to human made ones, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah,
as I
so, I
said to you,
mean,
you got to remember, mate, I was a believer for 20 years, okay? And I had those experiences. I went to many circles before I made my first one. But unfortunately, people think because I had a paranormal experience, that can't be a man-made circle. That's their parameter,
right,
okay?
exactly. That's the weird part about it.
But we're
But I mean,
saying that it is.
if you can do chaos magic and draw a sigil and imbue power into all these other things, and there's symbolism that everybody knows about nowadays, so why can't a crop circle that's made in the wheat field by humans have power? I mean,
Absolutely. And just to go back to what you said before, there was one example where a friend of mine went out with a newbie, okay, and they made this other guy was really fit, he was young, he was an athlete, so they got this crop circle done really quickly. He said, can I come out? I know you're a maker. So they got this crop circle done. It was beautiful. And then at the end, the apprentice said, can I just add something to it? I've got an idea. And he did this one tiny embellishment, and it completely changed the vibe of that circle so that it had negative connotations rather. It was a mistake. Yeah. But then when he came home, he was getting really bad luck for weeks at home, and he said, it's like Skinwalker, I brought it home with me, so that freaked me out a little bit when I heard that, because the circle was fine until he did that. And then it went pear-shaped for him for a few weeks when he came home.
Did he fix the situation at all, or?
No, I think it dissipated because obviously he must have sort of
realized.
Yeah, it wasn't my fault, Yeah,
the awareness
so you do,
you
do get negative connotations, but overall, you get, it was beautiful to walk into a circle that you've made and just see the joy, but at the same time, you say, I can't tell anybody that I was here 8 hours ago. You're frazzled from lack of sleep. You're really tired. You got out the field at 3:00, but you're still up 5 hours later because you know it's been reported on Crop Circle Connector, and you want to see the joy. And then, well, I'm not. People say, well, if you're artists, if you're doing this brilliant work, you'll be shouting it from the rooftops. You don't. We don't want to spoil everyone's day. And the second that a crop circle is admitted to be man-made, even years later, all of the magic is sucked out of that event.
That's kind of what I was going to ask, is why hasn't a farmer opened up his field to some competitions or some kind of making it
well, you know what, I know this
come out and make these symbols. And I mean,
do you know what, I had this conversation with the Universal Disclosure podcast where I did 2 hours with them a few weeks ago, and this point come up, and my answer, which might seem like a cop-out, would be that if you actually set that up, the phenomena wouldn't play. It just wouldn't turn up.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to see on what conditions it would turn up. Like if just a farmer secretly opened up his field to people, so that, I mean, maybe it's already happened where there must be some farmers that are okay with it.
I think it's happened it's happened this year already. That's right. What I think. There's been a crop circle made where paranormal stuff has happened around it, and where that crop circle was placed, I'm not saying, I've got to be careful what I say, but I think the scenario that you've just described might have been what happened with this particular circle. But as
would you ever consider bringing somebody out if they were sworn to secrecy?
Sorry, say that again.
Did you ever consider bringing someone out on a build if they were sworn to secrecy? I mean, this might be worth a trip.
Well, we brought somebody out on a build about 10 years ago, and this was really interesting because it was this T again. It was the bloke that was my mentor, and he had this couple of journalists. Well, I think they were journalists, okay? Because you get people that enter the subjects and they're really friendly with you, and then they stop replying to your emails and they stop replying to your phone calls. Like, you're friends, and then you're like ghosted. Sometimes we look back and we go, that guy come from nowhere. Was he a journalist? Was he military or something? But that happens a lot. So T said, I've got a couple of girls coming out tonight, and I said, T, there's something off here. I'm getting the vibe. I'm not sure if they're journalists. Something's off. All right. And they were really excited apparently to be coming out, and if I were to say to you, we're making a crop circle tonight, you'd probably go, yeah. I can tell you, you'd be bored stiff within 20 minutes, because it's the first hour is managing the circle out, and the rest of it is just is like 4 people like almost bumping into each other, just stomp, stomp, stomp. It's really, really boring. Okay, so it comes to 2 a.m. and one of these girls said, because they were just there for the spooky stuff, one of these girls said, oh, this is really boring. When's the supernatural stuff going to happen? All right. And the second that she said that, this purple corkscrew, it was as big as a juggernaut. Okay, it was defined edges. This purple corkscrew materialized above a ridge right behind her, and then just spun behind the ridge. It was as clear as day. It was bright. It was purple. I can still see it now. It had pink edges to it that were tinged, and she went, what? And the whole team, this collective whoa went up, because we'd all seen it, but she was the only person that hadn't seen it, because it's like it had placed itself so that it was behind her. And I thought that was really interesting, because T said, yeah, it's not going to play party tricks for you. You've got to respect it to see it, because you're on their land. You're not, this is their land, not ours,
Did her friend, was there 2 of them out, you said? Did her friend see it, or did?
Yeah, funnily enough, her friend did see it.
Yeah.
But she was the one that I felt was off. Okay, and it was her saying, I'm bored, where's the spooky stuff? And then it appeared, and she didn't see it. But I've got friends that are kind of like disillusioned with the infighting, they're disillusioned with the whole subject, and they said, we've come for the crop circles, now we just come down for the light show, and we just do night watches, and when we see UAPs, it seems to be that they react to us looking at them. Okay, and we do invocations to see them, and then they'll pop up. So they do the same invocations that we do when we make crop circles, and it just said it's like they're kind of like juvenile, and they're like playing for you. All right, and you say, wouldn't it be great to see something? And then they're there.
So why are you doing the book now, and why are you getting like makers to tell their stories, and why reveal your secrets?
Well, because it's just the polemic, guys. I just think that the voices have been quiet for so many years, and I tried to do this in 2018 when there was like a lot of crop circles going down, and I had the same terrible luck that I just explained with the other guy who did that flourish on that crop circle. I was getting terrible luck at home, and I was getting this is going to sound crazy, but at one point I actually did this big diatribe and I saved it, and then the next day that bit wasn't there, but the paragraph below it and above it was, and I thought, that's weird. So I stopped, and I thought, I'm not doing it. But then I found this document just appeared on my Google Drive last year, and I thought, now's the time. I think at the time, because the phenomenon was so prominent, it was like, maybe not now, but now. Last year we had the worst season on record. There were 7 circles, only 2 were worth looking at. But I just think I've got the vibe to do it now. And, the thing that's interesting in, I'm experiencing the same synchronicities and the same dream-driven events in writing this thing as when I was back in the fields, because you're kind of attracting it again, even though I'm not, getting my hands dirty in the fields, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to have something to do with social media and people on their phones having cameras. Like, it must be, now the farmers, easier for the farmers to catch people, easier for people to get caught. There's a whole virality that I'm sure that the makers would want to stay away from. So I bet you that has a lot to do with the.
Do you know what? I think you're right, because, as I said, I've been a ufologist since the 80s, and I really look back at that golden time, where all we had was the literature. That's all 90s, we had.
Yeah, well, I have my MUFON books from 19.
Yeah, and you get your before magazines, twice a year. You're looking for. I love that. I love that time, but unfortunately, it's gone
in the mail.
Loved it, and Jenny Reynolds brings a new book out, or Jack Vaya does a lecture, so I got to London to see him lecture, and that's interesting. Jack Vaya, when he talks about ufology, he's going down exactly the same rabbit holes that I'm going down here. It's multidimensional, it masquerades as ET, it's ancient, and it's all the same stuff that I'm talking about with the crop circles. It's an ancient phenomena that seems to have been with us since our inception. and it masquerades based on where we are within our evolution. So that's why we're seeing greys now. Why are we not seeing Nordic long hairs anymore from the 50s? It just seems to be that as we progress, it seems to be just beyond where we are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. That's like the keel kind of thing too. And yeah.
Yeah, the Operation Trojan Horse. I'm down with that stuff. I think that's where we are with it, guys. I don't think it's ET. And I also think that, you know, with the Kenneth Arnold sighting from 47, I don't think it's a coincidence that we had that sighting 2 years after Hiroshima, when whatever we're doing has actually rippled into the fabric and we're actually, you know, messing about with other neighbors, if you see what I mean, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe even inner Earth type thing too. I mean, it could be that could be part of it.
Yeah.
Is there anything you feel like we didn't cover that's in the book or that's important before we start to wrap up?
No, not really. I think the key thing to say is that don't worry. If some of your people hate me, don't worry. I was one of them, okay? And I was really, really pissed off when I found out that there was a human element. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you want to think that some aren't made, fine. But if you just take this on board, and I've got no agenda, okay? My book is going to be 1 star to hell when it comes out. I'll probably sell 100 copies. You know, it just seems to, it's just a message that I'm just saying, don't ignore us. There's something, even if, don't look at them as hoaxes. If you look at a crop circle that's been made with spiritual intent within a Neolithic site, it could be more special than you think it is. That's all I'd say, guys, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so in the meantime, before the book comes out, point people to your Substack, because you're kind of you got all your interviews are on there. All your some of your interviews with the makers are in there too, right?
Yeah. It's it can't be people.substack.com, and the reason why I called it can't be people was the first time I walked into a crop circle, I looked around and went, God, this can't be people. Okay, but it's a play on words, because now I know that people are involved. I'm just saying it's not just people. There's something else. It's not black and white. It's grey.
Yeah.
Pardon the pun.
All right. Well, we'll put that in the show notes. Thanks for this. Has been fun. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, let us know when the book actually comes out too.
I'm surprised.
No rush. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Ciao.
See ya.
Ciao.
I'm surprised you set that up. I mean, you've been.
Oh, I gotta talk to this. Yeah, I gotta do it.
Well,
I mean, honestly,
if people went back and listened to the first one and then listened to even the next couple intros after it, like really rattled you.
It's really, well, yeah, because you wanted to go out and make him, and I'm like, why are we gonna fake him and stuff? But
I still think you should make one.
Yeah, I don't know.
You got all the wheat in the world. Maybe we could send you over there to make one with them.
I don't think Saskatchewan has the ancient energy that Wiltshire has for some reason.
Why not? Because of the ice.
It was covered under 2 miles of ice, supposedly,
for that
50,000 years. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, England must have been covered in some ice too. No,
not in the ice age. I don't think.
Was it just barely out? Because like most of Europe wasn't it?
No, I don't think so. Actually, that we should check that. Now that you ask. I'm really curious, because that's kind of like what I usually go to. Like, was that area covered under ice supposedly? You know, because I feel like we're just missing that ancient. Because I feel like a lot of these cultures go back to the pre-Younger Dryas for the real ancient stuff. You know.
Here's my Google search.
The Cyclopean walls and stuff like that, and we'll see what that looks like. Wow, that's not. Oh, can you zoom in on that one? That one looks good. Yeah.
This one's probably the best one, huh?
Oh, yeah. So it is covered then, they say.
Let me zoom in on that.
That is. It looks like everything but Spain and, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, because England's got to be right up English Channel land bridge. Oh, because there's no, you know what? There's no English Channel.
Yeah, there's no. It's all Doggerland.
So Doggerland is probably exposed a little bit, right?
click on that. On that, can you expand the map on your right there? Because that's the one that looks like it's going to have the most detail.
Oh, I am expanding it. I just wasn't.
Oh, sure. No, there you go. Yeah.
I can't really tell that. against
Oh yeah, you can. So yeah, it covers the Scandinavian ice sheet does cover England. I mean, it's just going to be that's Spain right there and France and yeah, I think it's gonna well unless it's like right under it would be very very close if it was right under it. Look at how they have the North America sheet coming all the way down. There's that little lip that comes all the way down.
look at that.
Oh, look at that. It's well that's weird. It shows the
Just
channel.
maybe Wiltshire would be like the only bit of it that's exposed, right? That's probably almost Wiltshire right there. No, it's not far enough over.
That's Ireland, I think.
Oh yeah, that's Ireland.
But no, you're right. It would be that little tip right there. Show the tip right near Ireland. Go down to the right. That would be like where Wiltshire is.
This is just a picture.
Right on the little nipple, this underneath the S. No, over to the right.
Here?
Over to the right. Yeah, no, over to the right. Yeah, right. No, right there. That's probably right. That's Wiltshire right there. Like right at that edge of that ice is like Avebury.
Let's see here. I will overlay. I'll jump over to this one quick. So you got that little tip, and then Ireland's up there.
Oh, maybe that was the little. No.
So it's got to be almost all of that's exposed. So this is like all of this lower tip of England is exposed.
Yeah.
And this is Ireland.
Go. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Go back to your map now.
So
yeah, see, look at that. It's right. Like
would be right up against the ice almost.
Yeah.
Where all the fucking nomads live, probably.
And that's that. And Cornwall's the sacred area. That whole corner there is the sacred area. It looks like, I mean, if that map was correct, it seems like the ancient sacred area was exposed.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then here's Canada.
And look at that's different than the other one. Yeah.
Completely. This is North America now.
Yeah.
So Canada is completely covered except for this little bit here.
And where is that little bit? That's weird. Is that supposed to be? That looks like the border. Oh, that looks like the gap that Randall talks about, right between the border. That's the border of Alberta and BC there.
You could get through here, right?
That's between the two lobes, I think, right? That's that's between the Laurentian and the.
But this right here is probably almost right where Writing on Stone Provincial Park is.
Yeah, that's interesting that you talk about that. I was wondering about that. I didn't think it came up that far. I thought it was further down, but like why doesn't the tongue, the tip of the lobe show in when Randall shows us? Let me just show you which one I'm talking about here quickly while we're talking about this.
Tip of the lobe.
I'm going to share my screen here quickly. So Randall says right here, this is that what's this whole thing called again?
That's the Scablands.
The Scablands, but yeah. So this right here, see that? He thinks that's the tip, like that's the lobe of one of the sheets, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much where they have it.
That's
on this.
No, I don't think so, is it? That's right down below Osoyoos there. It's almost like directly down below Osoyoos.
Like right here? Or right here?
Maybe that is it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't think you know what it is? It's not the line. Oh, you know what it is? Those lines aren't the provincial lines. Those are the meridians.
Meridians, yeah.
So that's why it's confusing. So that's not that little juke up into Canada there is actually
way over.
Oh, it's Manning Park. Here, let me now. I bet you I'll show you what it is here. Oops. Share screen. I bet you it's this right here.
In the mountains?
Yeah.
Not over to the left there?
Maybe that, but that just seems to kind of go up quite a bit there.
Is that Lake Chelan?
This one here?
No, to the left.
To the left?
More.
That one's Ross Lake, it looks like.
More.
Baker Lake.
More. The big lake. What's that over to the left?
Right there, or this one?
That big one.
Over here?
Yeah. Or is
That's
that
the ocean. That's the bay.
Oh.
Yeah. That's Baker Lake.
Interesting. All right, we better get out of here. We're way off fucking topic now. So big thanks to Citizen D for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening, for tuning in live if you did, for supporting the show if you do. That's even more important. Grimerica.ca/support. If you're getting some value from our show, head over to grimerica.ca/support today. Sign up for a monthly or make a one-time donation, and that'd be super great. Share the show. Tell your friends about the show. Check out GrimericaOutlaw.ca for the podcast, adultbrain.ca for audiobooks, ebooks, print books, publishing books. Contact at thecabin.com for trips and events, and GrimericaCBD.com for tinctures and gummies. Other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.